Henry's work experience explores how our basic values, philosophies, attitudes, and paradigms affect and transform the way we behave and perform and how they impact outcomes. He's an award-winning former CIO. A CIO is a Chief Information Officer. And he's been a CEO also of a Fortune 500 company. He is an impacting coach and teacher, and as a result of a wide variety of business, technology, consultative, academic, and leadership roles he has held, he is uniquely qualified to address and identify with a diverse set of audiences and to offer them practical and real-world insight based on his experiences. Henry personally experienced and survived a dramatic personal setback when he became CEO of a New York Stock Exchange-listed company that he took public. He emerged from the ordeal with a perspective and formula for survival that he now shares with his audiences to help them avoid a similar fate and to encourage them to transform their lives. Enrique Henry P. Fiallo.
Thanks for that great introduction. I'm trying to figure out who you have me confused with. My name is Henry Fiallo, Enrique, but most people call me Henry, so feel free to call me that. And today I wanted to talk to you about some of the experiences I've had that led to some very early successes in my life. And then as my career continued, some experiences I had that led to some pretty significant and impacting failures. And what I learned from those, and I hope to be able to share with you some of those experiences and lessons learned. As I look back on them, I think they helped me mature and grow. I wish that I had been able to mature and grow without experiencing some of those issues. But life hands you things at times, and sometimes we do things to ourselves that we have to end up taking responsibility for and being accountable for. And wouldn't it be a travesty if you went through one of those trials and didn't take some positive things and some positive lessons from them? But before I do that, I want to tell you a story. A teacher had a class, and there were two students in the class, one a very bright young boy, and the other boy not so bright. And she handed out a test, a quiz, 10 questions. And so the class got busy working on the quiz, and little by little each student turned in the quiz until the two boys were left. And then each boy came up and turned in the results of the test. And so as they left the room, she glanced down at the test, and immediately she saw that there was a problem here. They both had gotten 9 out of 10 questions right. The very bright young boy, which she expected, and the not so bright young boy. And as she read through the test in more detail, she found the problem lay in the answer to the 10th question. So I guess the bright young boy had run out of time, and his answer to the 10th question was, I don't know the answer to this question. And the not so bright boy had answered, I don't know either. So I guess the lesson there is that when we take an action, we have to understand that there's a consequence for that action. And when we take a shortcut, there's going to be a consequence. And sometimes the consequences can be pretty dramatic. And so the theme of the message that I like to talk about and I like to share is to beware of what you become in pursuit of what you want. And there's two parts of that message. Let me take the second part first. In pursuit of what you want. What you want. Now what we want, there are other words for wants, right? What we want typically are goals that we set for ourselves, aspirations, dreams, things we want to accomplish. And my problem was I was focused on the second part of that message, what I wanted. And the focus became pretty obsessive. The first part of the message, I actually ignored, and a lot of people ignore as well. That first part of that message is, beware of what you become. And what I didn't realize is that in pursuit of goals, in pursuit of aspirations, in pursuit of successes, in pursuit of things that I thought I wanted and in fact in some cases thought I needed, I wasn't paying attention to what I was becoming. And we always become things when we achieve, when we pursue. Whatever it is we achieve, whatever it is we pursue, we become something in the process. I became something that I ended up not liking very much. And so that's what I want to talk to you about. So some background now. I came to this country at age 6 from Cuba with my grandmother and my brother. My mother had preceded us by about a year to establish herself. We came in 1958. And we grew up basically kind of a difficult life. My mother really worked hard at providing all that she could for us. My father had passed away when I was 2 years old. So we came to this country with nothing but the clothes on our backs. But it was a very typical American success story. I mean, where else in this world can a young immigrant boy, age 6, go to school, go to college? I was the first college graduate in my family. I was able to get a bachelor's degree from Barry University, an MBA from the University of Miami, and all but dissertation towards a doctorate at Nova Southeastern University. Where else but in this country can someone come penniless and through hard work and through perseverance and through focus and through dedication, and my mom remarried when I was 12 years old, through great parents, great parenting, achieve the things I achieved. What did I achieve? Well, I became the first Hispanic vice president in the history of Ryder, a local Fortune 200 company, very large company. Very great success. I'm a career technologist. I've held every job you can imagine in information technology. I've been a consultant, I've taught programming, I've been a manager of technology departments, a director. At Ryder, I became the first Hispanic vice president of their logistics systems group. And then I became chief information officer at several companies. That is the top information technology job in very large companies. Entergy, which is a utility in New Orleans, and chief technologist at Florida Power and Light, chief information officer for Cabletron. I won numerous awards. I was on magazine covers, articles written about me. The departments I ran won awards for the best places to work in information technology. By any measure that you can take, I was extremely successful. And finally, that success led to my appointment as president of a subsidiary of a company that I later took public, became chairman, chief executive officer, and president of a company that was listed on the New York Stock Exchange. I rang the opening bell the day we went public in August 19th of the year 2002. I became chief executive officer of that company. I named the company. I chose the stock symbol. I chose the logo. I hand-selected people. And so that was the pinnacle of my career success. I had reached the pinnacle in a career where people dream about achieving that kind of goal. Now, I tell you all of this not to pat myself on the back, lest you think I'm some kind of egomaniac. Back then, I was pretty close to it, if not. But I tell you this now so you have some perspective and some context to appreciate what happened next, and to appreciate that theme of beware of what you become in pursuit of what you want. And so what happened next was that in pursuit of what I wanted, I started to sacrifice sacrifice the things that my parents had taught me, to sacrifice the things that had gotten me there in the first place. The way I had gotten there up till then, I started to sacrifice it. It started to slip away and slip away until one day the FBI came knocking on the door. And to make a long story short, I ended up pleading guilty to one count of wire and securities fraud because of the business practices that not only had I allowed others in the company to engage in, but I had supported. I had sacrificed my ideals, my values, lost my integrity for the sake of delivering results and for the sake of the rewards and the goals. I was sentenced to 48 months in a federal prison by a federal judge. I remember the judge saying the day that gavel came clanging down, he said, "This is your penalty, and this will also act as a deterrent to others to not do the same." Judge was a very smart guy. He was actually Judge Stephen McAuliffe, the husband of the astronaut Krista McAuliffe, who died in one of the shuttle explosions, if you'll recall. As bright as Stephen McAuliffe is, he was mistaken about the deterrent part of my sentence, because if you read the news, you know that year after year after year, others have followed in my footsteps and committed some pretty significantly evil things in pursuit of what they wanted, not paying attention to what they were becoming. The list is endless. Adelphia, Enron, Tyco, Bernie Madoff, Rothstein. Just the other day, a number of Siemens ex-executives are being prosecuted by the SEC for bribes in order to gain a $1 billion contract in Argentina. And so something is causing intelligent and once good people to do really stupid things. Something is causing really bright people with the best intentions to all of a sudden become extremely foolish. That's what I became. I became a fool. A once bright and intelligent young man with a 4.0 grade point average from Barry University, achieving a master's degree while working full-time, achieving all those great things, serving on numerous boards of numerous non-profits. I was on Isla Jean's board at the Alliance for Aging. I was a Kiwanian Rookie of the Year, handed out toys at the hospitals at Christmas time, on mentoring high school kids and mentoring college kids. And something caused me to become a fool, to all of a sudden become stupid. And so I had a lot of time to think about what happened. In federal prison, you get up at 6 a.m., the lights come on at 6. You're expected to be out of the dormitories by 7 to do your job, whatever your job is, and the lights go out at 10. And you're not sleepy at 10 p.m. And so your head hits the pillow and you think, and you think, and I spent a lot of time trying to understand, what was it that happened to me? How did I get so stupid all of a sudden? How did I become a fool? How did I forsake all of the things that I had been taught, all of the things that I knew, the absolute truths, because I became convinced that there is no such thing as a relative truth. Once you stray into the relative truth area, you're doomed. You may be impacted in a very slight way. It may impact your relationships, it may impact your career, it may impact your health, it may impact a number of things. Maybe it would have great impact like it did with me, where you end up with a sentence and jail time. So in 3 years, which is where I spent what I spent in a federal prison, I spent 3 years of the 48 months in prison, 6 months in a halfway house, and some time off for good behavior. They call it good time. I did a lot of thinking, and I saw a lot of people just like me come into the door of that prison. CEOs, chief financial officers, chief operating officers, directors, politicians, county commissioners, mayors, doctors, lawyers. I saw a lot of people come in that door that were formerly very powerful people, very influential people, smart people, and they all did stupid things. And so I don't have all the answers, but I have what I think are some answers based on what I've been able to discern. I'll leave it up to you as I tell you the 10 things that I have been able to put together as to why I became a fool and I did stupid things that led to my downfall. The first is pride. Pride and arrogance. Let's call it pride and arrogance. What a wicked thing pride is. Those of us that are spiritual and religious understand that scriptures tell us that pride comes before a fall. And what happened to me was that I focused so much on the power and what I had achieved and what I had been able to do. I became so proud. Pride is a filter that does not allow you to look at the world in the right way. Pride is a scratched or foggy or dirty set of glasses that you put on that then allows you to justify and validate what you are doing, what you are pursuing, and not let you see what you are becoming. And so pride and arrogance became probably the primary thing that led me to become foolish and led me to do the things I did. The second thing I call negative influences. Negative influences. The people that surround you on a day-to-day basis will attempt to influence you. Sometimes consciously, sometimes subconsciously. Salespeople try to influence you to buy their product. People that want a donation from you try to influence you to make that donation. We live in a world where influence is a natural thing. When the preacher stands on the pulpit, he is trying to influence you about leading the right kind of life. The issue for me was, first of all, there's no lack of people wanting to give you advice when you get to a certain level in life. There's no lack of people wanting to get your ear and wanting to tell you, give you their point of view. The problem is that these influences, the negative influences, are sometimes hard to tell from the positive influences. You have to have a very strong grounding, a strong moral compass to understand the difference between a negative influence and a positive influence. Now, some negative influences are so direct, they're like someone hitting you in the face with a 2x4. It's obvious, and you learn how to stay away from those. I'm talking about the subtle negative influences. If someone shoves me hard, I get off course immediately because it's a very direct influence. I feel it, I know it, I realize it. I'm off track, I get off course. But the subtle negative influences are the nudges that are ever so slight, and they're repetitive. And before you know it, you are off track and you don't even know how you got there. So the negative influences was the second of the 10 things that I think turned me into a foolish man. The third, I think, is extremely important. It's lacking integrity. Lacking integrity. I had integrity. I lost it along the way. There are many things you can lack and still be successful. As a leader, as a chief executive officer, as a parent, as a spouse, as a neighbor, as a fellow Rotarian, as anyone in life, there are many things you can lack. Why? Because we don't have all of the knowledge in the world and all of the skills in the world. We can acquire them, but the one thing you cannot lack if you want to be truly successful is integrity. The minute you lose integrity, you lose it all. Thomas Jefferson said, he wrote in a letter to John Adams, that there were two things that made for what he called a natural aristocracy. He was talking about leadership. Remember that our forefathers came to this country getting away from this artificial aristocracy of kings and queens that got their leadership by birthright and by inheriting rather than by having the substance and the character to lead. And he said there were two things. He said virtue and talent. Well, virtue is character and talent is skill. So those are the two things that you need to be a whole and influencing, a positively influencing person, whether it be a parent or a business person or a service club member, and that is character and skill. I lost my character. I lost integrity. The fourth thing I call majoring in minor things. I borrowed that phrase from a gentleman by the name of Jim Rohn, who's become a mentor to me. He passed away several years ago. He left behind a legacy in his writings. And he talks about majoring in minor things. And what that means is there's only a handful of things that are truly important. And we struggle every day to not be distracted by the myriad and sundry things that are out there that want to steal our time. I also refer to it as being spread 10 miles wide and an inch deep. It is hard to swim in a lake that is 10 miles wide and an inch deep. It is hard to be successful when you are spread so thin that you are not able to concentrate on the things of true value. And that's what happened to me. As an inexperienced CEO, I wanted to do it all. And you can't do it all. The late Steve Jobs, if any of you have read his book, you will come to know that one of the greatest things he did when he came back to Apple is remove the distractions. Take the product line and make it very, very simple. And he said, we're going to be world class at a few things. The Mac, the iPhone, the iPod, and the iPad. We're not going to do all these other things. And so he ended up removing all those things. So majoring in minor things. Neglecting is the next one. I neglected things that I should have done. Either the next one, lacking values. I didn't set a set of core values for the company that would have allowed the company and others to govern themselves and to set the tone. Blindly trusting. I put people in place that I did not vet before I let them run in their roles and in their jobs. Spin doctoring. As a CEO, I was taught to spin the truth. I was taught to obfuscate when asked a question. Shortcuts. I took many shortcuts. We all know that sometimes people don't want to stop at a red light and they turn into a parking lot to go around. Shortcuts. And then finally, the last one, having a short-term focus. Not understanding that this company was in business for the long term and that the future was in front of us, and to take a very short-term view was to cannibalize that future and to destroy that future. Those are the things that I figured out were the 10 things that I did that cost me dearly and my family dearly and shareholders dearly. So what good would it do for a man to gain the world only to lose his soul?
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
for
your
the
message.
opportunity.